Hi, you guys, and welcome back to another episode here of the Sweet Life Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm April Beach, the host of this show. This is episode number 311, and we are diving in with a friend of mine, Charles Byrd, who's going to unpack 4 different types of JV partnerships that feel really good and are very, very profitable for you to get into place for your business. So who is this show for? This show is for you if you have an established program or training. Doesn't even matter the actual cost and the value of that program. Charles is going to unpack different strategies based on the value of your program here in the show. So if you have an established training or program and you want to get more eyes on you, you don't probably run ads. If you're like me, Facebook and I had a big, huge divorce. That includes my Facebook ads account. And so, and you might not either have the investment or want to invest in running LinkedIn ads, and maybe that isn't even aligning with your company, but you need to get more eyes on your business in a way that feels really good to you. So joint venture partnerships are a great way to do that. And so our guest today, Charles Byrd, was referred to me by multiple different people because he is this go-to guy on building JV partnerships in the way that he talks about it. And we unpack actually what is a JV partnership and what would be the right next steps for you. So if you want to generate more leads with the right people in a way that aligns with your time. Charles is very much like I am. He takes his kids to cool places and travels around a lot and just frankly doesn't overwork himself. He's been very strategic in actually how he's modeled his business. If you want to do that, get more leads into your business as well, this is a great episode for you to listen to. So again, this is episode number 311, and you can visit all of the show notes by cruising over to sweetlifeco.com/311 or by just going to sweetlifeco.com, clicking on the podcast. This is episode number 311, and everything will be over there waiting for you. If you're ready, let's go ahead and dive in and meet my friend Charles. All right, you guys, thank you for being here this week. I am here with my friend Charles, and Charles and I were introduced to each other by a mutual friend who is always looking to connect great people with great people. And one of the places that he learned that was from Charles himself. And so Charles has a gifting of helping you to build your network, build your business, by helping you to rethink how you get in front of your ideal audience in a way that is a win-win for everybody. So I'm really excited to be talking about what we're going to chat about on today's show. Charles, welcome to the Sweet Life Entrepreneur Podcast. You want to give people a little bit of a background on who you are and how you got to the point where you are right now in your business and your area of expertise?
Absolutely. And April, thanks so much for having me. So I help businesses scale with joint venture partnerships, referrals, speaking. And for a little backstory straight into what I do today, I worked in the Silicon Valley for 15 years. I was a director at a billion-dollar software company. I left to get a taste of the entrepreneurial freedom I read about in books. I started with a low-ticket productivity course. And being new to the online space, I didn't have a list or connections at that time. So started going to a lot of events and connecting with people online, and quickly found my new peer group of entrepreneurs already had my ideal clients in their communities. So I started setting up presentations to other people's audiences, delivering a high value training and offering the deeper dive course, and started growing my email list quickly, making sales, making a positive impact. So I thought, since this is working, what if I take my IT and systems background and simplify and systematize the entire joint venture process, which I did. And eventually people wondered how I book 2 to 6 joint venture promotions per week for my offers to other people's communities. And I was at a mastermind in Aspen, and my phone's blowing up with texts and messenger messages and people knocking on the room door going, how do you line up so many of these deals? So I decided to put together my first high ticket event called Pure JV. And that's the market I've been serving ever since. At this point, that's through one-on-one work with companies over 5 weeks. And the steps that we walk people through are creating a unique joint venture strategy for their product and market, help them identify their most profitable partners, show them how to connect to those partners through warm channels. My favorite part, how to guide the conversations to land the deals, frequently on the first call. Operationally, how to execute those deals from a systems perspective, and then how to turn each deal into 2 or 3 more. 8 of my clients in the first year added 1.25 to 6 million in additional revenue. I had 3 clients on stage with Tony Robbins last month, teaching them how to create embedded partnerships. So their offers inside of Tony's. One of my clients, Dr. Dan Pompa, is just booked on Joe Rogan through his PR company. And I'm showing him how to parlay that into warm intros to Lex Friedman and Andrew Huberman to take that win and take it to a whole nother level. So it's a way to simply get in front of more of your ideal clients through other people's communities, audiences, and build amazing relationships on the way.
And now I'm sure our listeners know why I was so excited to bring you here on the show, because this is exactly what people are looking for. And the way you go about doing it, we've talked about affiliate launches and we've talked about those things. This is completely different. So the way you go about doing this is very unique, and it's very relational. And that's one of the reasons why I have been so interested in working with you as well for a long time. And I've seen the case studies and I know your clients, and it's just what you do. You create amazing results in a way that feels really, really good. So let's kind of go back to the beginning for our listeners who might not know actually what a joint venture is. Let's define what JV is for our listeners or people who may be confused.
Yeah. So again, coming out of corporate, I thought a joint venture is when 2 big companies like partner together and they're basically married. And this is nothing quite like that. You could think of them as promotional partnerships. And I'll just share a basic example, but I'll point out there's you have the product or service, someone else has the audience. And so to use an example of like Brian Tracy, he's got an audience of 500,000 people who've subscribed to receive his emails. They follow him because he teaches sales, productivity, high performance. And so he'll partner with experts that complement those topics. And so imagine Brian mailing his 500,000 people, inviting them to a presentation you're putting on for your product or service because it aligns with why people follow him to begin with. And then everyone who registers for that training is added to your email list. So you can literally add thousands of people to your list a day during those promotions. And then you deliver a high value training. In this example, everyone who signs up is a new client of yours, and you share revenue with Brian because it was his audience to begin with. So that would be like an example of a webinar type of promotion. But it also could be, I'll cover a few different joint venture types in the process. It could also be me simply sending you a referral. If we've lined up a referral partnership, that's a type of joint venture as well. And systematizing the joint venture process. In my presentation, I have a slide that says, do you get your referrals by luck or by design? Is it baked into the DNA of what you're doing? So I personally get 12 to 20 referrals to $1 million plus businesses a week through this process. So speaking to other people's groups, whether that's a webinar format or a physical stage, referral partnerships, embedded partnerships, that's where as other people make sales of their product or service, you're making a sale of yours because your offer is inside of theirs, which I know, April, we were chatting and you were excited because that aligns with some of your licensing strategies, creating embedded partnerships around that. And lastly would be social JVs, much like this interview is. So it's a conversation. This, of course, gets me some exposure to your audience, April. If I'm promoting this show to my audience, that's getting you more exposure. So this is another form of joint venture, which we never even talked about in those terms. It just happens to be another way to think about it.
Yeah. So for our listeners who clearly this is somebody, I'm sure, something that almost everybody who's listening is going to be like, this is, I absolutely need to be doing this. This sounds so smart. But what do they need to actually have in place already to be in a position to start making these JV partnerships? What sort of content or trainings or what level of expertise do you recommend people have before they start moving into this? What's the prerequisite to move into this type of a partnership?
Sure. So I'll dive into what those specifically are. Also addressing what are some of the things that hold people back from wanting to do these kind of things. Number one, how are these configured? If people don't know how the deals are put together, then it's easy to avoid them because they don't know what the next step is, or they feel they could be complicated, um, and or they, even if they see alignment, they don't know how to guide a conversation into making that a reality, or something I call the reciprocation trap, where people feel that if someone else promotes them or their offer, that they have to promote the other person's offer, which is simply a story in our head that's not actually true. Or one person's audience is way bigger and they feel they're not big enough to participate yet, which is, again, just simply a self-limiting thought. So the prerequisites, as you asked, are as follows. Now, based on the different JV types, some of them have more requirements than others to be able to achieve technically. So let's start at the simple side. Referrals. Not a lot of infrastructure required for referrals. So you can simply have a conversation with a friend, a peer, a client, and talk through who right fit connections are for your products, services, or rooms that you may want to get in front of. Minimal infrastructure. We're talking texts, emails, those kind of basic things. So, and some way to track those from a spreadsheet to however you feel like tracking them, which of course we have super dialed systems for. And then to a little more advanced, where if you're doing something like a webinar, like the example I shared regarding Brian Tracy, you would need a little more infrastructure. Again, there's layers to have very simple approaches versus more advanced. But in general, if you were doing something like a webinar, you would want emails for a partner to be able to send out on your behalf so that they're promoting it to their audience, because you're not going to have them write your emails. You'll share them so their job's easier. Then those emails will have links to register for a training. That would mean you'd need some type of landing page where someone can read what the presentation's about. If they're interested in it, they can sign up. And as they put their name and email in, those folks are getting added to your email list. So you'd have some type of autoresponder email tool to collect those leads coming through from the registrations. You'd need a tool to be able to deliver the webinar, something like Zoom or GoToWebinar, something like that. So point being, each strategy has its own specific systems and tools behind it. But keep in mind, a lot of these can be very straightforward. So certainly don't get intimidated by the tools. It just has to do with which approach is the best for your business. And to kind of cut to the chase a little bit on that, if you have higher ticket offers, right, your offers are more expensive. We're talking 10, 15, 20K. Doing big promotions isn't even a good use of your time. You want to simply get in front of your ideal clients, going straight to where they are. So where are affluent entrepreneurs? Well, they're in other high ticket masterminds. They're in other high ticket programs. That's where I spend my time, is presenting to rooms full of $1 million plus businesses. So I can do one presentation, which, by the way, I'm not even making an offer. I haven't made an offer in front of a room in probably 3 years. But I walk off the stage and everyone who's interested comes and has a chat. We line up a follow-up call, and a bunch of those become clients. And then I meet with them a year later, and many of them they're over $1 million in new revenue just from that. So Um, in any case, those are some of the JV types, some of the reciprocation trap things that can hold people back. But really, what I want to highlight is it's a new way of thinking of everyone you meet, they know someone who could be an ideal client for you or an ideal partner for you. So it's building better relationships to get to those winning outcomes.
Yeah, you said so many things there. I want to pull out again and just highlight. First of all, is that oftentimes when you speak you aren't actually making an offer, and I think that our audience would assume that you're coming in and you're doing an actual sales webinar or a training, which could obviously be the case as well. But in what you said and the way you do it, going in and just organically teaching your area of expertise or introducing a different thought process regarding the solution that you provide, that is, I think that feels really good. That's one of the things that you do that I love the most, because that really aligns more with how we operate as a company. And I think a lot of our listeners are gonna find that as well. And I think just allowing for our listeners to perhaps even get permission, maybe they need to realize that it's okay to go and teach and pour in without feeling the need to sell and sell and sell. And according to your system and your process, you're actually more profitable, possibly because you don't actually do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, again, I'll draw these distinctions that could be helpful for people to self place where they may fit the best with some of these JV types. For one, I think everyone listening should lean into referrals. It's simple, it's highly effective. Especially, this doesn't mean just from your own clients. I mean, I get a ton from clients, but it's from my peer group. It's from my friends. In fact, before we hit record here, you and I scheduled a call to line up great connections for each other. How
Right.
much did that cost either of us? Nothing.
Yeah.
um, so, number one, start there. I will make a distinction with, like, my offers are quite high ticket because of the value they bring. But I'll point out, if I had a 2K offer or 5K offer, I would be in front of broader groups and I would be making offers in those presentations. It just has to do with where you are in the market, where I'm talking to more advanced businesses in general anyway. And when they hear a strategy that they don't have in place and they want in place, in a way they don't need to be sold, they're like, I want that.
Right.
So, um, whereas when I was running group programs, which I did for many years, I'd actually fill them from, well, I guess three main places. One, I would do broader webinars, and the call to action was to a sales call. And so that would be people mailing their lists, like that example, the Brian Tracy one. Um, and I would present to the mid-level masterminds, people in groups that are 8, 10, 15K, which those are way smaller groups, but they're full of ideal clients. These people have invested in themselves. They have enough traction in their business to do that. And typically, the further along entrepreneur is, the way easier it is to help them because they have so many other ducks in a row.
Right.
Um, and I'll point out, by consciously choosing to move up market, your life gets way easier.
I've heard people say that for years, and it wasn't until I started doing that myself where I actually believed him. I think that was in the beginning, there was just a lot of intimidation there, but over the years, I've realized you're completely right about that. So that's a really good distinction. So my next question was going to be what is the value? Who do you best connect with based on the value of your offer? And I know our listeners have offers absolutely from a few $1,000s up to 10K, whereas other of our listeners have $50,000 programs that they deliver as well. So, what I'm hearing that you just said is based on the actual product that you're selling, that's where you're going to, the way that you would approach and deliver your content within this JV partnership would be based on the actual, really financial level or the audience I don't want to say maturity because that's not right. The audience, how advanced the buyer is with correlation with that offer and what they usually tend to need to buy. Because you're right, because our more advanced or profitable entrepreneurs, they have their teams, they have their systems, they're not so busy in the things that those people that are trying to break like that 30 or 40K a month ceiling, or try all of those processes that tend to need to be brought into place for those other kind of mid-level entrepreneurs. So that's a really, really good point. So let's kind of recap again some of these. So you said there are four primary types of JV partnerships that you love to guide people through. Can we recap those one more time? So
Sure.
just kind of cover those again for our listeners.
Yeah. So number one is presenting to other people's audiences. And you could kind of put that in a few camps. That could be speaking on a stage in front of a physical room. It could be presenting virtually to a group, and then the caliber of that group. It could be a higher level group, or it could be a broader webinar to a big list, a big audience. So all of those are presenting to a group. Number two, referral partnerships. Again, highly recommend these. And keep in mind, referrals don't have to just be to clients, although those are lovely, of course. You can get referrals to joint venture partners. You can get referrals to stages. Like if you want more podcasts, get your referrals to podcasts. So you aim the cannon at what you are after. Then there's embedded partnerships. Again, this is where there's different configurations, but in general, it's where your product or service is inside of someone else's offer, or some of your content is in someone else's offer that's like a lead source for you. And those are some of my favorite because you're making a singular deal that represents ongoing lead flow. And just to cite an example of that, one of my clients, Jackson Milan, came to me when it was at 1.8 million. A year later, he's over 6 million in cash collected through joint ventures. He was running Facebook ads that weren't working particularly well and started working a lot worse when Facebook shut down his account. And that's when he was referred over to me, and he's a quick start
I love
personality.
Jackson. I've taught a master class in Jackson's group before. I think Jackson actually might have been one of the people that originally introduced us. Now that I'm thinking back, before our other friend Brian, this is so funny. I've seen the ins and out of how Jackson stuff works, and you're a genius, my friend. If you did that.
Yeah, Jackson, he implements. So he hired me.
Yes.
We dove in on a strategy, identifying ideal partners, how to land those partners. He landed 70 joint ventures in 2 months, which is insane, quite honestly.
Right.
And then I taught him how to create embedded partnerships, and he lined up 15 of those. He more than tripled the business, all the while touring Australia with his wife and two dogs in a 4x4 camper van before buying a farm by the ocean and jungle. But he wrote an intro for me 2 weeks ago. I think I got a screenshot of it. He does this intro, and he's like, Charles has made me more money than any human on planet Earth.
Right. Right. I believe it. I believe it. Absolutely. What a great case study. And I love, so I can like continue to share a little bit, with our audience that I've actually been within his ecosystem, and seen that. And it's a very well-oiled machine. I will say that.
Yeah, he's done a beautiful job at it. I want to point one other thing out is I started with joint ventures off a $200 product. So you can do this the whole way. And it is a risk-free lead source, meaning
Right.
you only pay commission on sales that have been made. So some promos work great. You send your partner money. In fact, I made a sale earlier today from a referral from a good friend of mine, and I'm like, remind me your PayPal, like, gonna send him money. Now, keep in mind, he didn't do the intro to make money. He did it because it's the right fit for that person, but who doesn't like getting money in the process? Um, so again, $200 product, successfully JV'd with that. And then as I evolved as a entrepreneur and prices went to 2K and then 5 and then 8 and have continued up past 45 for different offers. Um, it's the strategy the whole time. Um, I I do, I guess, personally like it when folks offers are a little higher ticket because they can ROI me so fast.
Mm-hmm.
Just as an example of Todd Hartley, he's got his core offer was an 8K offer helping businesses leverage video in their sales process to increase conversion. um, Tony Robbins hired him to train all of his sales teams across his companies. That worked so well that now Tony has him on stage for business mastery. And he wanted to learn to JV with other people, not just Tony. So within 4 weeks of working together, we helped get this whole system in production. He'd lined up 6 JVs. He happened to pay me 35K. His first joint venture brought 125K. Next joint venture, 125K. He's added 100,000 a month for the last 5 months in money he never had previously. So anyway, with higher ticket offers, like, not that everyone does this, mind you, but if he can 4 or 5x his money on deal number one,
Right.
but he's lining them up multiple per week going forward,
Mm-hmm.
it's a pretty nice thing.
That's a pretty great way to justify the investment of the genius you bring to somebody's business too. I mean, this is just like it's great for him. It's great for you. I want all of our listeners to be thinking about just totally a little sidebar here, you guys. On your program, can your students 4 or 5 times the ROI on your program too, besides the JV side of it. And it's always something to be mindful about, or how long would that take them, or actually what do they need to do to be able to do that. So this is such a great conversation. Okay, so I think, because I totally sidetracked us, you talking about Jackson. So we went over the four basic types. Of course, I have my notes here because I love learning from you. If we talked about presenting in front of other people's groups, we talked about the referral partnerships. We talked about the embedded
Yeah.
partnerships, which you and I both love. You from a JV standpoint, me from a licensing standpoint. Those are just so powerful and so simple. Did I miss the fourth one? What's
And
number
the
four?
fourth one was social JVs, much like this kind of interview.
Social. Oh my goodness, so cool. Um, my friend, I have my chicken scratch notes here that I'm going to turn into our show notes, which I'm sure will turn into more resources for our listeners to recap, because there was so much wisdom here in this show. So thank you very much for your time and sharing this. How can people get into your ecosystem? How can people tap into, where do you hang out? How can they continue to learn from you and tap into your world, like our company is tapping into your world?
Oh, wonderful. Well, thanks for asking. Simply pop over to charlesbyrd.com, BYRD. It's got more info on the kind of work we do. There's ways to reach me and the team through there. I'm also on facebook.com/Charles Byrd, BYRD. I don't use LinkedIn a ton, but you can find me on there too. So yeah, these would be good places to connect.
Awesome. Thank you so very much, Charles. I love learning from you and appreciate you pouring into our community and your time here.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, what a great episode with Charles. As you heard, and we've talked about affiliate launches before on this show, you've met others that have been in here. I will say to you that personally, one of our strategies as a company that we have been leaning into for the last couple of years is having me teach in other business masterminds. In that sort of, way number one here is presenting other people's groups. I've even taught a podcast on how to create a training program that's aligned for your next step here, if you want to go back and re-listen to that. on how to teach a masterclass and other programs. The way Charles does it, you guys, is just so organic. I don't want to use the word authentic, because unfortunately, I think that great word has been overused. But it's very organic and it's a good fit. So my summary for you here is, if you do have a higher ticket, definitely make sure you're connecting with Charles more. It's charlesbyrd.com. And especially for those of you guys that hang out on Facebook, it sounds like he's over there on Facebook. And connect with him more, follow along. He's a very, very smart and giving man, and will lead you in the right direction.